Always excited to do a webinar and help people hire more. It seems like every day that goes by, hiring just sucks more to do, right? At least for us in our industry. It's just tougher and tougher, and even strategies that were working not too long ago feel like they're not working anymore. And so, of course, I've hired hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and experienced the pain of trying to hire seasonal, part-time workers who don't really care about what we do or why we do it, and learned a lot from that. But as a consultant too, especially recently, I've been getting asked for more and more help to help other companies hire people. And over the past 6 or 7 years, we've developed what we're calling a blueprint for success. It's a plan that we follow that leads us to a great candidate very consistently. I've used it to hire all my people personally who work for me, and I've used it for customers who have looked to hire everything from frontline workers to landscape estimators to general managers. And they've paid a lot for our assistance and our guidance on it. So I'm excited to share it with more people here in this free webinar, particularly with Team Engine really being the engine that powers you through this blueprint. But before we jump too far in, I've been saying for years that the talent war is here. And for those of you who have never heard me say that, what I want you to understand is that we are in this really crazy job market. So if you're able to look on the screen, what you'll see is back in 2010, when I got into the industry, we had a lot of people who were unemployed, that red line, and we had not a lot of open jobs, right? So in thousands of jobs, we had like 3 million jobs available in this country, but like 15 million people unemployed. And that's how I actually ended up in the landscape industry. It was a tough job market, and I didn't have a lot of job prospects. And I landed in an industry I didn't really know much about. And as I grew up in the landscape and snow industry, I started to get to hire people, and I observed, in 2011, my first hire was really easy. I was able to put out a posting on Craigslist. It didn't really matter what that was, and it I got thousands, hundreds of responses, and then I was able to just throw away anybody who had a spelling error or worked for a pizza place or didn't seem like a good fit and hire somebody. And then as time went on, and as I started to work in a company with more managerial responsibility that was growing rapidly, I found hiring was getting tougher and tougher through 2012, 2015. It was like, boy, what was working before seems like it's just less effective. And what we're having to spend on ZipRecruiter or Indeed or Craigslist is just going higher and higher. But then in 2018, we entered this whole parallel different universe of job market. And that's where, for the first time in US history, we had more jobs available than people to work them. And if you think back over your career, if you've been doing it long enough, you probably started to really feel the pain of hiring people about 2018. That's when it was like, boy, what we're doing isn't even ineffective, it's non-effective. And that continued for a while. And then during COVID, you see that big spike in 2020 where everybody got laid off. But that was very artificial and temporary. And immediately the number of people within a year came back to where it was, and that gap has widened. And it's not really closing all that much. Now it varies state to state depending on where you are, but across the country, we have a 3.7% unemployment rate, which means there's 10.1 million open jobs and only 6.1 million people unemployed to work them. And by the way, that 3.7% unemployment is basically the theoretical minimum. Economists will argue what the minimum unemployment can be in the US, but there's always going to be people going out of business or people moving. And so we can't really see any less unemployment than that. And so what I want you to understand is we need a new tactic. If you're just using a version of your job ad from 2010 or 2015, if you're using the same playbook or blueprint from way back then and hoping that it's going to work, or being frustrated that it's not, or throwing more money to get more visibility, but you haven't fundamentally changed the way that you've hired, then I don't think you can win in this job market, because it is the polar opposite of what we're used to. So, this is my whole blueprint. I didn't save any secrets. I'm giving it all to you. And I'm going to walk you through over the next 45 minutes or so all of these steps. And then we're going to reserve just a few minutes to talk about onboarding employees for success, because that's equally important. So we really have 4 levels of this blueprint. One is the job ad. We need our job ads to be really concise, but also to discuss purpose and opportunity far more than benefits and requirements. We need to target the right kinds of workers. And in my book, that means people who are inexperienced, because there's just not enough people in the green industry to try and hopefully find them. We need to look for people who have a certain type of talent. I'll talk about what that is, and who exhibit values more than screening for education or experience. And then we need to really step up our game with communication. It won't surprise any of you who are Team Engine customers already that the answer is text-based communication. But even for people who are on Team Engine and still not seeing some of the success they want, probably it's because their communication is not frequent enough, or it's too formal. And we got to really bring that level down in terms of formality and up in terms of frequency for communication. And then I think where Team Engine has not been able to necessarily change the game is on the interview side, right? And we want you to have structured interviews that are situationally based and involve some level of independency for screening. And that's where I think we can really help you out today, above and beyond. Team Engine's got the first 3 boxes covered. I got you covered on the 4th one today. And you'll see on the bottom, I really truly am a big believer in objective talent assessments or skills-based knowledge check, depending on the level of the job, to introduce objectivity here. But hopefully you can't ignore that my number 1 point on the far left is speed is the most important factor. You can do everything right, but be too slow and still lose with this blueprint. And we're going to talk a lot about speed. I really truly believe that we can't be having more than 24 hours in between any of these actions. And even that is flirting with disaster, because the first person to respond is going to win. So I'm going to walk you through all of these as we go through today. But before we do, what I want you to really think about is what matters most. Let's think about the most important thing. And this is not Neal's theory. This is not my ideas. This is proven science that's been around for decades. And all the way back in 1964, there was a psychologist by the name of Frederick Herzberg who rolled out what he called the 2-factor theory. And he was trying to figure out what motivates employees. And Herzberg discovered that there were 2 sets of factors. One are hygiene factors. These are things that we have to do to not stink. And then there's a set of motivation factors, factors that actually get people excited. And so when it comes to employees, satisfaction is really the bare minimum. Things like job security, good pay, whatever that means for whoever you're talking to, wherever you are in the country, safe working conditions, insurance and vacations, even some fringe benefits. These are hygiene factors, meaning if you take them away or you don't have them, your employees will be dissatisfied. But adding them never increases satisfaction. So more pay doesn't actually make employees all that much happier. Now, there's a point in time where someone's not making enough to survive and they're going to quit, of course. But every study, time after time again, shows that after a certain point of finances, money doesn't really matter that much. I remember being part of the time at Case where a 401k was introduced and we had this big fancy dinner. And I got to tell you, 401ks are super expensive to roll out. We're doing it right now because we can afford to at my company, but it's crazy how much it costs. And you do all this work and all this effort, you spend all this money, and guess what? Years later, performance doesn't change. People aren't more excited to be there because you have it. Now, they may make it part of their selection at the very beginning, but after years and years, only a fraction of people tend to participate in things like retirement plans, as an example. Now, if you remove a retirement plan or benefit, people get really upset. But what Herzberg found was motivation factors are different. Things like challenging work, recognition, responsibility, meaningful work, decision making ability, sense of importance, and personal growth, these always lead to increased motivation. And we see time and time again that when we focus on motivation factors in job postings, in hiring candidate interviews, we will get way more interest and attention from high quality candidates than if we talk about pay and benefits. So, if we start with that in mind, if we can focus on these motivation factors for our whole outlook around this, I believe and I've seen that we'll attract better talent and we'll engage them better once they're on the job. So, the first section of this blueprint was job ads or job postings. Now, starting with a good advertisement is so much easier said than done. And I feel like I'm always in an argument with people that their job description is different than their job advertisement, right? So number one, just stop going to these job boards and putting up your job description. That's a different document. And if you think about what an advertisement is, it's not the same. You would never roll out your customer terms and conditions in your contract in a newspaper or mobile ad for your customers, right? Or your business dev people would never do that. It'd be crazy. You would never tell a customer, hey, I'm Neal with Neal's Landscaping. And if you don't pay us on time, we're going to charge you extra. And if you don't respond quick enough, then we're going to delay your project. And, you know, depending on the weather, we may or may not honor the brand promises we have. We never say that, but we say it on the contract. What do we say in the advertisement? We say we're going to provide the best value at the best price, right? And that's one thing that's really important. Let's focus on the employee value rather than the employee price or the benefits. Let's talk about what we're going to give them, why it's so much more valuable, even if we're not the highest paying. Let's match the tone of customer advertisements. And let's discuss the mission and vision of the company. Why would someone want to work in landscaping? Why? Well, maybe because places like the Harvard School of Public Health show that when you spend more time in the natural environment, you have better health outcomes. You're more likely to live longer and have less illness than when you're outside in the natural environment. The tone of a customer advertisement is going to be basically what would a customer want to hear on them, right? So a customer wants to hear, hey, here's why we're going to be able to help you, not here's how much we're going to charge. Hey, here's the solution we're going to solve. So for a customer, it's going to be, do you want to spend more time in the natural environment with your family? Do you want to enjoy the outdoors? We can help you. For an employee, that tone would be, do you want to help people enjoy the natural environment? Do you want to achieve a personal dream? Do you want to get to a level of success in your career? We'll develop you for that, right? It's optimistic, it's forward focused, it's not based in details. The mission and vision of your company may be that you're preserving the environment. Like what we do every day in the green industry, when done right, is a sustainable practice. That is huge. And if you look at some of the best irrigation companies, they're not talking about green lawns. They're talking about saving water, one of our most precious resources. If you look at some of the best tree companies, they're not talking about chopping down trees. They're talking about sustainability for the planet. Or maybe your mission and purpose as a company isn't that. Maybe like me, you're not really a plant person, or you're trying to attract not necessarily plant people. And one of the best things that you can do, and one of the reasons I love the green industry so much, is because we're able to provide jobs to people who made poor mistakes in their past or didn't have some of the same benefits that some of us had. Maybe they're uneducated. Maybe they fell in with a rough crowd. Maybe they got a dumb visible tattoo that's stopping them from working elsewhere, but we can hire them in the green industry. That's huge. Let's talk about that. And I would discuss the opportunity. When I was hiring snow shovelers to work for me at $15 an hour, which was not a lot of money, and my competition was paying $20 and $25 an hour, One of the things that would happen if they were interested in signing up is I would give them a tour and they would talk to someone who was in a full time position, dressed up professional, but started in their role. And they would hear a story about how someone was given an opportunity to learn and grow into something. And that guy would say, listen, this isn't for everybody. There's hundreds of people who come through this role, and not all of them end up in this. But this is a company that cares enough to help you get there if you want. And I'm going to show you a job description that I did recently for a landscape estimator in a couple minutes, and you'll see how much about the opportunity we talk about. In fact, if you wanted me to help you hire somebody, which is a service that we provide, one of the questions that I'm going to ask you is, what's the professional development budget for this person? And most companies have never thought about that. They say we go to trade shows or we'll pay for this, but I want a number and I want to advertise that. And by the way, I think that number should be about 10% of annual pay. The other thing, though, in job ads that I always talk about is what we call CSR initiatives. So CSR stands for corporate social responsibility. And that is anything that your business does besides exist to make money. So it could be to benefit the environment. It could be a charity that you're involved with. It could be something in the community or diversity or inclusion benefit. And hey, we keep getting asked, yeah, there's going to be a recording of this seminar and we'll make that available for you. And if you talk about your CSR initiatives, you'll get an 11% response in your job ad. Do you know how much money you have to increase your pay to get an 11% response? It's about 30%. So if you're trying to hire someone for 20 bucks an hour, you can either talk about your CSR initiatives or you can raise that rate to about $27. And then you'll have equal benefit in terms of response. So I would really hammer on CSR. And the reason why all of these things are so important is because when researchers ask people what attracts you to a job, they do not say pay and benefits. Well, they say pay, but pay is ranked number 8. The most important things when someone attracts a job in order of importance, their perceived fit to the organization, their perceived fit to the job, the way that employees are treated, which is why we have to talk about onboarding a little bit, because all those public reviews about your company on Glassdoor and Indeed and Google really matter. Your organizational prestige, your developmental opportunities, the challenge of the work, and the organizational image. Pay is important. It's the number 8 most important thing, which is why we should pay well, especially if we can afford it, but we shouldn't lead with it. We should lead with all these other things. So to put it all together, I want to share with you a landscape estimator job description that I recently rolled out with a company. Opportunity for landscape construction estimator with award-winning family-owned firm to make a meaningful impact with multi-million-dollar projects. This role is critical to the creation of landscape projects that enhance the lives of people throughout New England, including public and school sports fields, playgrounds and splash pads, and ADA accessible open spaces, as well as beautifying university dormitories, apartments, condominiums, and corporate campuses. So the whole goal here was to talk about the opportunity and the organizational prestige, plus the purpose and impact to be made in the role. Then we can talk about what the ideal candidate has. Experience creating landscape construction estimates, project managing and tracking labor and cost, and the ability to manage relationships with landscape architects, general contractors, suppliers, and subcontractors. And then you're a fit if you're seeking a small team environment where hard work and being a team player is rewarded. So I'm appealing to their values and to the challenge of the job. If you're seeking opportunities to continually grow and develop in competencies and career. So we're looking for someone growth minded here because of the growing company. If you're seeking meaningful and complex projects executed to exceed customer expectations and ability to manage multiple simultaneous projects from end to end. And then we continue with a couple things. One is more prestige. Our firm is a national top 150 landscape contractor and has been voted best landscaper regionally for 9 consecutive years, which, by the way, in this case, came from a basically meaningless town newspaper, but sounds good, right? So it's easy to get this prestige even if your company is not a national leader. And the company supports dozens of local charities on an annual basis, benefiting children, veterans, and the public. Super easy, right? Now, we do have to talk about the benefits. Competitive salary of 75,000 to 100,000. In my opinion, that range is a little broad, but that was what I had to deal with. $2,500 annual professional development budget. That's something I forced them to include and make provisions for. Payment of all professional licensure costs, on the job training, paid vacation, sick time, and holidays, medical and dental insurance, 401k plan, voluntary life insurance, clothing allowance. We're trying to build out the benefits a little bit, but I think it got a little long. It was something that the company was paying for, and it was important to them that it all be listed. I also felt like the top candidate qualifications got a little bit long, but you'll notice here in that tone conversation, this is not you must have, this is not requirements. This is framed as top candidate qualifications, because I don't believe that a degree in construction management or estimating was actually necessary. They wanted to write 5 years of proven work experience. I got it down to work experience. Time management, organizational skills, strong communication preferences, really those, and ability to perform under tight deadlines. I don't think that that's necessary here, because everybody's going to say that they are, and we can screen for it in the interview stage, but we included it. Proficiency in Excel, Bluebeam, and B2W software, that was really important. That should have been there. I wish that it had been there so alone, so it would really have been drawn attention to as a hardline requirement, right? Valid driver's license and clean driving history, kind of dumb. Willingness to work in Chicopee, Mass company headquarters, that's important. And then ability to attend project site visits. Again, I think that that's weak. But that is the overall tone. Aspirational, purpose-driven, opportunity, organizational prestige. Not you must be this, you must be that. List of requirements, right? As Dave Pacifico from Team Engine says, if you're good, we'll only flog you 3 times a day, right? Which is how most job ads read. And we got a fair amount of response using Team Engine and publishing it. Now, talk about who to target. I'm really big on targeting untapped talent pools. These are people from disadvantaged backgrounds who are uneducated or unexperienced. Maybe they're disabled. It could be an immigrant or a veteran, long-term unemployed, or formerly incarcerated, or retirees. I think we should be targeting anybody from these talent pools as much as possible. 1, because in our industry, we have the ability to do so. 2, because I believe that these people, regardless of their situation, deserve the opportunity to have a great job. And 3, because I know that you will find far more applicants in these talent pools than anywhere else. So I'll admit I lied a little bit when I said that unemployment was 3.7%. And it's the government's fault, right? So here's the reason why I lied. Because there's different types of unemployment. In fact, the federal government defines 6 different types of unemployment. And so there's U3 unemployment, which most people talk about, which is what those numbers come from, and U6 unemployment. So U3 is the official unemployment rate, 3.5, 3.7%, depending on what time frame you're looking about. But U6 is the official rate plus those who are marginally attached to the workforce, meaning people who are not looking for work, but who are available to work and have looked in the past 12 months, or discourage workers who aren't looking for work due to a job market reason, meaning, hey, I live in a small town and nobody's hiring, so I'm going to stop looking. Or people who are working but are part-time unemployed, and they've settled for a part-time job or multiple part-time jobs. And this is really on the rise, right? So people are saying, I can't make it work in a full-time job right now, so I'm going to drive for Uber and have an Etsy store or embrace my side hustle, and they get removed from that official rate. So it's no surprise that 6.5% are actually almost double as many people when you consider this U6 rate. And so if we can incorporate that, if we can embrace them, I think that would be great. Now, we had a question for, is there a seminar that walks you through the important details to add on a job posting? I think that Team Engine probably has, I know for a fact Team Engine has samples and white papers, and I'm sure there's components of seminars that walk you through all those details. My advice to you would be less is better, but there are some that are legally required, right? So like more and more states are adding you have to have put a job um, uh, pay range, and you should. Um, but really, I think the most important thing are mission and vision, opportunity, and key appeals to talent, et cetera. So you'll get this webinar. You can borrow my template there if you want. Now, when we're working with people who do respond to those great job postings, I think we need to create better screening. So most people are trying to screen their applicants on experience or education or technical skills or employment gaps or professional credentials or background checks or referrals from other employees. And I think most of that just is not that indicative of how good someone's going to be in the job. And the reason why is um, with some of it doesn't really matter, right? Sometimes people who can't do good work just get lots of education. Sometimes people work for a company that has a lot of prestige. So you hear, oh, wow, this person must be great because they worked here, but really they didn't have that big of a role. And there's a lot of things that are out of people's control. I don't think someone is less competent just because they chose not to work or were forced not to work for a few years or didn't have opportunities to get some of this stuff. And I think that when people make mistakes in the past, they should be given another chance to prove themselves. And just because they made a mistake once doesn't mean that they're not as worthwhile. And the biggest problem is people lie about all this stuff on their resume, right? Um, yes, you should be soliciting as many reviews as possible for Google, Indeed, Glassdoor from your people, especially if they like you, right? Really stack the deck on that. Not too late for that. And the reason why I say that all this stuff kind of doesn't matter is because the experience proves it, right? So there's a company called The Body Shop. You may recognize them from your local mall. They sell bath products. Um, and they moved to something called open hiring for their frontline people. They only ask 3 questions. One, are you legal to work in the US? Two, can you stand on your feet for 8 hours? And three, can you lift up to 50 pounds? And if the answer is yes, yes, and yes, then they put you on a list. And as soon as a position opens, the first person on the list gets it. And what they found by switching to open hiring is that they had 60% lower turnover for seasonal employees and increased productivity of about 13%, in addition to reducing their hiring costs by more than 90%. Why do you think that their performance would improve by asking less questions? I think it's because the people who got the job were pretty grateful for it. A lot of people who ended up working there don't have as many options. Maybe they can't go work for a bank because of something in their background check or their appearance, right? Maybe they don't feel professional enough to go work in different environments, so they don't. They settle for this. I think that we can really get a lot of great workers by just not judging them as harshly before we even meet them. But we do have to still screen people, right? And so if I'm talking about frontline green industry workers, I want to screen them on their ability to work legally because I believe we should do everything in accordance with the laws of our state and country. I think we should ask them about their distance to the job and their willingness to commute. I think that for some jobs, we have to have an actual physical ability to do them in this industry, and they need to be available to work at certain times. Although I would really challenge operations people to embrace quote unquote mom's hours a lot more than we do in this industry. And I think they need to have a willingness to learn. That's what I would ask people to do. Now, for higher level roles, I do really firmly believe in objective tests. Now, objective talent assessments are not the same thing as personality or behavioral assessments. So anything that you see from DISC, from Colby, from Predictive Index, from Caliper, even Clifton Strengths Finder, which I'm certified in and love, these are all personality or behavioral assessments. They do not determine in any way, shape, or form talent on the job, no matter how much they claim they do. And if they're really claiming it, you can open up the technical assessments and you can look and you'll see that they maybe have a 60% predictive validity, which is slightly better than flipping a coin. And I know that for a fact because I've looked at all of them. But there are two talent assessments that actually are predictive of success. One is the Builder Profile 10 from Gallup. This measures entrepreneurial ability. It compares people to the general population and top quartile builders, builders being defined as someone who creates economic energy where none previously existed. I will never, ever hire somebody who's not a top quartile builder to work for me in any role that requires autonomy. Now, this doesn't mean that they're super experienced. I've used this assessment to hire 3 separate college students over the past 7 years. And there's someone working for me now by the name of Cassidy who is phenomenal, even though she hasn't even turned 21 for a couple of weeks. So it has nothing to do with their business knowledge or business experience. It's a truly universal and non-discriminatory test. But Cassidy is a top quartile builder. And as a result, she's built a marketing function of our company that is phenomenal and extremely valuable in a way that we've been able to reward her for financially, which is super exciting. So BP10 is one that I would use for anybody I hire in terms of management, operations, estimating, general management, or even just directors or heads of departments. When it comes to sales, some of you may be familiar with the Objective Management Group sales assessment. This is a sales specific assessment that I use. It manages sales management ability, sales leadership ability, salesperson ability, and even ability for top of funnel, call center, or non-selling professionals in sales support. And again, what we find is that 92% of people who are recommended and hired reach the top half of their sales force within 12 months. But even more importantly, what the science has proven is that 75% of those who are not recommended but hired anyway fail within 6 months. And this is where your typical behavioral assessment falls short. They will say, oh, salespeople need to be direct or aggressive. That's fine that the best performing ones do, but they never tell you that even bad salespeople can be direct and aggressive, right? And so we need to test both ways. And thank you to Dara for putting up the job description templates in the chat. So if you want these assessments from Objective Management Group or from Gallup for their BP10 assessment, I'd be happy to help you. There are other assessments out there. I don't know how great they are, but I'm happy to help you evaluate them too if you want to get in touch with me later. All right. Now, no matter what we're using, we have to make it easy to apply, right? So this is where the communication starts to come in. So I would really streamline your applications. If you're not yet using Team Engine, you have to get something that is only the basic info. Stop asking for where people went to high school and college and what their degrees were and their 20 years of work history, because it just doesn't matter. And we're just intimidating people who maybe otherwise would apply. You got to get it on a mobile friendly web form. More and more people are using their phones to browse the internet. If you're looking for younger workers primarily for this industry, they are not on a desktop. And they want to be able to fill out a form that's there. And if you're using a PDF and you expect people to print and return, that's probably the problem. And then I would get these QR codes and get them on trucks and yard signs and business cards and anywhere you can that you're hiring. And then when someone applies, I believe the first to respond is going to win. And the problem is you can't just be quick, right? It's not enough just to be quick because you're assuming that you can be quicker than your competition. But the applicant is not applying at the same time to you and your competition for a job, right? So when we encounter someone in the application process, I have to assume that they've been at it a while. I have to assume that they've submitted applications for the past week to somebody else. And the concern is they may already have an interview scheduled. They may already have it. And I see great candidates withdraw their applications so often because why would they even be open for a screening if they got a job offer that they're happy with? Right? People are not searching around trying to compare their job offers and keep employers on the line. Not here in the US where we want you to start on Monday if I hire you today, right? So we have to be super, super fast to respond and win. Never, ever more than 24 hours. If someone doesn't respond to me within 24 hours, I assume they didn't get the message. And the good news is we can create automated and personalized responses with a tool like Team Engine to really change the game. And the other thing that I see people do as a mistake all the time is they don't go text based. So, what do we know about younger workers in this generation? They hate talking on the telephone and they get some anxiety every time it rings. What do HR people do? They get an application in via email and then they dial them up and they're surprised when they don't answer. The young people hate talking on the phone. Why aren't we using text message? Text is so low stakes. It's so unassuming. It's so easy to kind of get people on the hook. That's what we got to do first, and then we can move them to the phone if there's a fit when they're more comfortable with it. And really, it's about lots of small steps. So this communication of frequently talking with them, engage really fast to confirm their basic info, and then quickly schedule that interview and use a text confirmation. Remind them of the scheduled interview coming up, welcome them really warmly and be prepared. I used to walk back and forth in my office and I would see people slumped in a chair and I would be like, "Hey, do you need help?" And they'd say, "Well, I'm here for an interview." I go, "Oh, who's it with and when is it?" And they said, "Well, it's supposed to be 5 minutes ago." And my managers weren't showing up to their interviews on time because they were busy and then yelling at me in a meeting that they couldn't hire anybody. It's like they left. You weren't prepared for them. It's crazy. I would shorten the interview process as much as possible. I'm going to talk about independent interviews and having two of them. And I'm advocating for back to back independent interviews and not 1 hour or maybe even not 30 minutes. I mean, my first interview is usually about 14 minutes. And then hire them quickly and keep them engaged and onboard them well. And we'll talk about that too. Really, the keys to success is quality and speed, frequent communication, leveraging technology, and Team Engine has all of that in spades. If you're not a Team Engine customer, scan that code and get on board. The yeah, and great point about helping with with language barriers, right? Text is really huge. And again, I really believe that Team Engine is the engine behind all of this. If you've never tried it, you'll know that you can communicate with your people in a bilingual way. You can do all your announcements, and it truly changes the game. I so wish that it existed when I was trying to hire hundreds or thousands of snow shovelers. And they also automate all those QR codes for you. So sign up for that trial offer if you haven't yet. All right, we got to keep moving because we're almost out of time. Let's talk about the interview itself. So the screening conversation is one thing. I think that can happen primarily over text, really just a quick conversation. When it comes to interviews, I said there are three things that are important to have. One is structure, two is situations, and three is a level of independence. So when I talk about a level of independence, what I mean is you want multiple people to interview and you want to do it separately. Now, for front level people, maybe we don't care. It's low risk. We're going to throw people into a job and see if it works. But for high level people, to really get a good opinion, we need multiple points of data. And so I'm in favor of taking your interview questions that you have and splitting them in half to 2 interviews. I do think that if you go to 3 interviews, it becomes a lot and your process slows down. But there are circumstances where maybe it makes sense. I think 1 interview is just not enough look at an individual to really get a good sense for them. And so I like 2 as the sweet spot. I split it in half. And then the structured, scored, and situational looks like this. So these are 2 questions. Actually, I have 3 questions that I used when I was hiring that same landscape estimator. So one thing that I wanted to make sure is that they could use Excel. And I didn't really feel like it was worth slowing down the process by paying for an Excel skills-based test that they would take. Plus, it's pretty easy to cheat on those things. And so I wanted to ask them a really good question that would tell me their level of Excel. And a lot of hiring people might say, how often do you use Excel? Or would you consider yourself an advanced user of Excel? I asked, what specific functions and formulas do you use in Excel? And so put it on them to come up with the answer. And a 5-point answer would be something that shows intermediate use of Excel, including formulas such as if, sum if, or XLOOKUP, or match. Pivot tables or charts are also strong answers. The interviewee should go beyond basic formulas such as sum, counter, average. And so maybe that level of knowledge is beyond your personal knowledge of Excel, and you may need some help developing these questions. But for me, as someone who's done estimating in Excel, I know that if someone's going to say, I use sum if, I use match, I use pivot tables, then there are probably 5 points on this. And if they tell me they use sum, counter, average, they're probably 2 points. But I even had people who interviewed for this job and said in screening that they used Excel and then couldn't name a single Excel function. And so this provides a very clear, objective answer. Yeah, I'm okay if they utilize Googling, searching, or YouTubing formulas. I don't expect them to like write this out, but they should be able to name them at the estimator level, right? Now, if it's not an estimator, I don't know that I asked this question at all, right? This was specific to landscape estimator. So I'm open with it. The situational question that I've asked in this place. So I didn't ask this when I interviewed, say, Cassidy, because I want her to use Excel, but not at this level. The question I ask is, Cassidy, tell me about a time when you were asked to do a task that was brand new that you didn't know how to do before. What do you do? And the stronger answer there is I Google or YouTube it before I call my boss and ask them for help. And the value or the skill I'm looking for is a little bit of figure it out initiative because we work remotely on a part-time basis, right? In this case, this person, landscape estimator, was working in an office and in a collaborative way. And so we asked, what type of work environment do you thrive in? And some people said, I love to be in a truck or in the field because they were really field managers trying to position themselves as this landscape estimator job. So in this case, we specified that a weak answer would be in the field or a truck or an open office with constant interaction. We wanted them to name an office with open lines of communication that was like semi-private. And we just based that off of what the environment would look like. This is a compatibility type question. So if you're in HR or you're involved in interviewing or screening people, I think that you roll out a set of questions like this in conjunction with the manager who's going to be managing them. And then the last step is to have situational questions. So this question 13 was, we had 15 questions for, on part 1 and 15 questions on part 2, 0 overlap in the questions. Question 13 on part 2 was situation. You're working on an important estimate due in 3 days, requires all your attention. Out of the blue, another opportunity arises that's due at the same time. And on top of that, job in the field you estimate needs your attention. There's only one of you. What do you do? There's no right answer, but we figured out that a strong answer would consider their time management system and ability to add more capacity without seeking help from others first. But in this situation, the demands will most likely need help. So they should be able to articulate how they'll approach their supervisor and renegotiate priorities and be clear about capacity, but also express a desire to go above and beyond with working late and Saturday if needed. Because that's the cultural expectation in this place at the company. So our job when developing these questions was to go to the managers, go to the company, figure out their culture, figure out their working, and then build situations where we could let candidates either answer correctly or select themselves out of the process. And again, 0 overlap. So they wanted us to hire them. That's what they paid us to do. I did the first interview. If they scored above a certain threshold in terms of actual points, then I would refer them to my partner, who within 48 hours would give them the second interview. And if they scored a certain amount of points, then we would recommend them to move forward. My partner did not know anything about them. He never saw their resume. I never told him any thoughts. He was interviewing entirely blind based on his rubric. And so when we got together to discuss the quality candidate, we had contrasting or agreed points that were coming from separate lenses, which is so valuable in figuring out true talent. Now, I want to take the last 10 minutes and just talk about onboarding, right? Because I think that this is only as good as your employee experience. If we can't figure out how to onboard people really well and get them engaged in the job immediately, then we're never going to stop putting out fires of hiring people. And those poor reviews on Indeed and Glassdoor and Google are going to continue to stack up. And then we're really going to be in a bad place. So our goal with onboarding is to set the stage for engagement. What's employee engagement? Well, I'm going to propose the definition from Gallup, which is employees who are involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work in their workplace. We want employees to be involved, enthusiastic, and committed. That's when they do their best work. And what the science proves of behavioral economics is one way to get engagement is for people to feel like they're doing their best every day, to feel like they're working in their strength zone. And Gallup has a history with what we call strengths-based development. And I want to share with you just briefly the history of Clifton Strengths. So back in 1950, the Nebraska School Study Council, who was in charge of figuring out how students learn, commissioned a study of 6,000 10th graders to test the best method of speed reading, because back in the 50s, speed reading was this fascination that people had. And so they do whatever you do when you try and measure the effectiveness of something in science. You measure where people are at today, you perform some intervention, and then you measure again how much they improved. And in this case, they took 6,000 10th graders, they figured out how fast they could read, they put them through different courses, and then they measured how fast they could read again. And they thought that they would discover the best way to teach them to speed read. They did not. They discovered that no technique was better than another. They also discovered that everybody improved. So it didn't matter how someone tried to improve in an area, as long as they were making an effort at it, they did improve. But most importantly for us today, they figured out that those with a natural talent excelled. And here's what I mean by that. When we look at all the students, we could look at their first attempt versus their second attempt. And we could group them into two groups. The average readers could read on average 90 words per minute. Then they took the course and they could measure 150 words per minute, or read 150 words per minute. But there was this group of students who were naturally gifted. They had a natural talent, these above average readers. And even before they took the speed reading course, they could read 350 words per minute. Now, they took the same course as these students who could only read 90 and came out reading 150. And we know that everybody improved. Do you know how many words per minute they came out reading? Any guesses in the chat? They started at 350. They took the same course and they came out reading. How many do you think? No guesses, just praise for Team Engine, as it should be. They came out reading 2,900 words per minute. And people looked at this and said, holy smokes, what happened? How can someone go through the same level of investment and see that type of exponential gain? And Don Clifton, who was one of the researchers, who's become the father of the strengths-based approach, articulately asked, what would happen if we think about what's right with people rather than fixating on what's wrong with them? And the results have been outstanding. The results have been that teams which focus on their strengths show 6.9% higher customer engagement, 15% higher employee engagement, 29.4% higher profit. There's no investment that you'll make that will get you that much profit on an ROI basis. 19.3% higher sales. These people are way safer. They're way less likely to leave their company, but unfortunately, only 1 in 5 employees today feel like their strengths are used every day. And we have to do better. And really, when it comes to interviewing and selecting people for our company, we need to take a strengths-based approach where we're not looking for issues that they have. Oh, this person moved jobs too many times. Oh, this person doesn't have this education or this skill. We need to try and look for their strength to develop it, because the teams that do are the ones who are excelling. And what is a strength? Well, a strength is really just a developed talent. So a naturally recurring pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior that can be productively applied, such as effortlessly and instinctively starting conversations, thinking in an orderly or timely manner, being able to easily influence others, seeing patterns in data, or consistently having a positive outlook on life. But what I'd like to do for just 2 minutes is a little exercise to help you understand this for yourself. So hopefully you can grab very quickly a piece of paper and a pen. I've got mine here. Take your piece of paper, hold it like this, and draw a line straight down the middle for me. Okay? Draw a line straight down the middle so that you have two columns. And what I want you to do in a second, maybe you're still grabbing yours, but in a second, I'm going to have you write the sentence, I use my strengths every day as many times as you can. And we're going to go for 30 seconds. So not yet. Grab your piece of paper, hold it lengthwise, draw a line down the middle, and then you're going to choose either the right-hand column or the left-hand column. And in just that column, I want you to write the sentence, I use my strengths every day for 30 seconds. Ready, set, go. I use my strengths every day. Oh, my animations aren't working. 25 seconds. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How many did we get? Usually people are 3, sometimes 4. Maybe you got a 5. Now I'm going to give you another chance to do that. 4. All right. Some engagement. People are alive on the other end of the webinar. It's always good to see. All right. I'm going to give you another chance to do it. This time you're going to use the other column, and you're also going to use your other hand for me. Ready, set, go. You're using your non-dominant hand. I use my strengths every day. You got 25 seconds, if you're still doing it. 20 seconds. 15. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pencils down. How many that time? 1, 1.5, 2. And the quality? Junk, right? Is it legible at all? And what was that experience like? Horrible, frustrating, unlegible, unreadable. Yeah, brutal, humbling. Now, here's the thing. I probably have one or two of you who's left-handed. And if I compare your left-handed attempts to the rest of our right-handed attempts, I would expect to see similar quality and quantity, even though you got there in an opposite way, right? Yeah, laughable. Here's the thing. If I were to assign to you as homework every day for the next 2 weeks to just take 15 minutes in the evening and practice writing the sentence with your non-dominant hand, would you improve over time? Of course. Would you be interested or passionate about that? No way. You'd be like, Neal, this is so stupid. Why can't I just practice using this place where I have a natural talent? Because there I'll really improve. But every day we're asking people to identify an area where they don't have talent and get better at it. Every day at work, we're saying, you know what, Neal, you're just not that organized. You don't think in this way. Try thinking in that way better. Hey, man, you just don't seem to like have this urgency to cross things off a list. Try harder at that. Hey, you don't seem to understand innately how people feel. Let's send you to a course for that. And this traditional approach to professional development will only prevent us from catastrophic failure. What the science has proven, and the reason why those teams are so great, is that a strengths-based approach proves that we can only learn some behaviors. Now, we can always learn skills and knowledge, but these areas where we have natural talent can propel us to success in any role. And sometimes you have a salesperson who's really outgoing and all about people, and sometimes you have a salesperson who's really introverted and just comes up with great solutions, right? We're not all the same, even though we have equal success. And strengths is the way to get there for success. And as managers, as people involved in hiring, I think that we have to advocate for this more. I think that in order to get better results on the job, we got to tell the managers who we're working with to take a strengths based approach, to look at what this person has going, to help coach them. And this needs to be a partnership between human resources and managers. And why improve here for any of these things? Why leverage this blueprint? Why hire more people? Why get them to perform? Because I think over the whole world, people want a good job. In fact, I know it from the Gallup polls. They're in every single country. And I personally believe that over the next 30 years, the world's going to be one with economic force alone, and that jobs are the heart and soul of a nation, but we don't spend enough time thinking about what a great job is or where it comes from. And so, hey, I hope this was helpful. And if it was, if you liked anything I was able to share with you today and you want to help me change the world, I'm dedicating my life to helping more companies create more great jobs and get more great people in the right role. And if you want to help me on that mission, there's two ways for you to do that. One is just go build great workplaces. I know where some of you are from. You're all over the country. I've never interacted with some of you. Best thing you can do is just take this information and start hiring better next week and engaging better next week. And you'll build a great workplace. And I believe if we all do that, then your company will become better. Your people will be happier. Your KPIs will improve. You'll be able to afford and pay more. And that's a great thing. And our country will be better as a result. And if you want to do more, you can refer me to speak. The only reason I'm here sharing this with you today is because someone referred me to Team Engine a few years ago, and we've been able to build a great relationship. So if you know of a trade show, a conference, a large company, a chamber of commerce, or any group of people who would benefit from a message like this, or on sales or leadership or business as a whole, I love an email. Your quick message to them introducing me could help me help a lot of other people too. But mostly keep in touch. That's my cell phone and my email. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. I know we didn't leave a ton of time for questions, but I'm happy to answer them offline as you explore this. The whole webinar available for you. Definitely put Team Engine as the center of powering this blueprint and start having success with it. But if you need help in the process, definitely reach out. I'm happy to help you on the way. And with that, I'll thank you for spending a portion of your afternoon with me, and we'll see you next time.